How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez here on Wrestling Observer Live. We are here every day, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, Sundays, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern, Saturday mornings with Jim Valley, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern, and Sundays with Andrew Zarian. And it is Thursday on the show. You know what that means? Actually, you don't know what it means today, because we got some big things coming up on the program today, not the least of which is, yes, the return of Mike Sempervive. He's going to be back on the show today. He's been gone for so long, producer Dom doesn't even remember the last time he was on. But he is back. And today we will be talking all of the news, including last night's AEW Dynamite, which had a lot of things going on, including the revelation that Sting will have his final match teaming with Darby Allin against the Young Bucks. So we'll tell you about that, all of the other stuff that went down on the show, and talk about the news. Got some news on The Rock and a couple of other things as well. Kind of a slow news day. Most of the news was yesterday. Everything else was just coming out of Dynamite. And then in the final segment of the show, yes, we will be joined by the Queen of Extreme herself, Francine, is going to be on the program today. So we got a lot to talk to her about. Been a while since we had a guest. Got a big one here today. It's going to be a lot of fun. So a lot to get into on the show. We should have time for some text messages, maybe. If you want, text us, 425-780-7566. That is 425-780-7566. F4W Online at gmail.com is the email. F4W Online at gmail.com. F4W Online on Threads, Instagram, and Cameo. You can get a cameo at F4W Online, as well as at Bryan Alvarez on X. So back in a moment with the return of Sempervive to kick it off today, Wrestling Observer Live.
There's 1, 2. Now he's got Bryan Alvarez. He whips him into the corner hard. Adam Firestorm following up, catches a boot to the face. Bryan Alvarez with another hard shot to the head. 1, 2. This is the most aggressive I've seen Bryan Alvarez today here in Portland Wrestling. Now he's got his knee across the throat. He's choking him, LC.
Well, it's like this week Alvarez has something to prove, brother. Something to prove to his sweet little lady over there.
Of course, Adam Firestorm with a big win over Black Dragon last week. Looking for another one here. There's a sunset flip. Is he going to go down? Yes, he is. Over he goes. 1, 2, 3. It is all over. Adam Firestorm with the victory over beautiful Bryan Alvarez here in Portland Wrestling. Now out Bryan Alvarez firing away with a boot. Action continues after the bell. Goes for the back body drop. No! Face first plant by Adam Firestorm. Your winner once, looks like he'll be your winner twice. Action continues. There's a whip into the far corner. Adam Firestorm follows with a spinning kick. LC, I think Bryan Alvarez has bit off more than he could chew tonight. Miss Rentone really disgusted over in the corner. Adam Firestorm not done. There's a Lion's Hold on top. He hooks him again. 1, 2. 2.5. I thought we had a 3 count earlier in this match, LC. I was wrong. I'm sorry.
I can't believe it. I thought Youth Gone Wild was just adding a little salt to the wound. I thought Alvarez was Alvarez and a 2-time loser, brother.
Well, Mark Watson's hand must have stopped just short of the 3 count. And these eyes of mine need glasses, because I thought I saw a 3 count Bryan Alvarez going up top.
Oh, we'll forget about your cataracts, brother. Up and over he goes.
Nobody home. Adam Firestorm back in control, playing a bit of possum. He's climbing up top. Is Rento and Otto really upset? There he goes. Swamp
oh, and that one hit.
There's a hook leg. 1, 2, 3. Now it's all over.
A 2-time loser. And does the LC have to look after Miss Rento and Otto tonight, baby?
There's Adam Firestorm, your winner in this match. Once, twice, 3 times, it didn't matter. Bryan Alvarez not up to it. Miss Rento and Otto absolutely disgusted with it. Mark Watson explaining to him it was a 3 count this time. No hook the leg. Fair and square, Adam Firestorm, your winner here on Portland Wrestling. Fans will be right back with after a message from our sponsors.
Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. And yes, he actually made it. I didn't think it was going to happen, but he showed up at the last second. Mike Sempervive is back from the dead. What's going on?
Did you miss me?
I'll find out today.
Well, I don't know. I heard a couple of those shows with Tom. Sounded like you were laboring a little bit there.
Are you
needed
kidding
to
me?
be back.
I never labor.
No.
Well, are you alive?
Yeah, I'm alive. I'm here, aren't I? Think I'm a ghost?
I don't know. I was starting to think that maybe it was all done.
No, well, pulled the strap down, kicked out. It's amazing. Francine's going to be on today. They have prescribed me a ECW locker room level of medication, so I'm on all of those right now, so we'll see how today goes.
What the heck did you have?
That's a bad case of bronchitis that I'm almost over with now. So
that sucks.
It does.
Well, it's good to see you back.
No, it's not. You don't care. You couldn't care less.
Oh, get out of here.
Honestly, do you really care?
Oh, stop. I asked every day if you were alive. I was trying to cash in or something, but side story.
Maybe I'll stop bothering you about renegotiations, huh? Can't wait to get me out of here. Get some other one of these fools in here.
Hey, somehow I did
Josh
multiple.
Nason, Brian Rose.
I did multiple shows with Tom and didn't swear a single time. So that's a big improvement. Well, since you can't do much, Mike, what are you going to watch this weekend?
Wait, wait a second. What do you mean? What do you mean I can't do much?
Well, I mean you're not going to be jogging or running a marathon this weekend. Clearly,
I will not be running.
You're
a marathon.
still recovering.
No, there's going to be a lot of fast walk in the neighborhood. Will be about the extent of it until I get all this breath back here and everything. But you're asking me what I'm going to be watching? Well, I guess I'm going to be watching. I guess I'm going to be watching Collision, followed up by Battle of the Belts 9, because if I don't, then you'll be complaining, hey, why didn't you watch Battle of the Belts 9? So I guess I'll be checking that out. Plus, you got the New Japan show in Chicago this weekend. The only reason I'll be watching that is to see my co-host over at the Big Audio Nightmare, Adam Summers, in the front row.
Wait, what? There's a show in Chicago?
Oh, no, that's in Chicago. That's right. That's going to be a little bit later on. Where's this one at? San Jose? I'll be watching to see your tag team partner on Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer, back in the mix there in the front row. You're going to go down there for that, or are you still scared of weather?
My God, you are just on fire today.
Trying to get all the breath back.
Have you not spoken in like 2 weeks or something like that?
It's been in small doses. So.
I can always tell those days where Dave hasn't talked to anybody all day. I can always tell those days.
You got to get your breath back.
That's where you are right now.
Building it back up here.
The show is in San Jose,
California.
Battle in the Valley. And no, I am not going to that show, although I regret it now.
Why?
Well, because I didn't go because we were gonna have a massive snowstorm here, and I knew everything would go wrong. I wouldn't be able to get there. I wouldn't be able to get back. Snowed in, and then today they announced actually we're not gonna have any snow after all. It's gonna be cold. That's too late. But we have SmackDown Friday.
Yeah.
Bianca and Bayley.
You gonna watch that?
Joaquin and Cruz del Toro versus Humberto and Angel. Of course
I'm watching that. Thank God. Please give them time. Please.
Grayson Waller, Cameron Grimes. We have got Eddie Kingston and Wheeler Yuta. Hikaru Shida and Queen Aminata and Swerve Strickland and Matt Sydal on Rampage. Saturday, we got an Adam Copeland Open Challenge on Collision. Deonna Purrazzo and Red Velvet. Brian Cage and the Gates of Agony against Lance Archer and the Righteous. And the return of Hangman Page to Norfolk. And then Battle of the Belts afterwards. Big Bill and Ricky against Jericho and Sammy Guevara. Julia Hart against Anna Jay for the TBS title. And yeah, Jericho returned last night on the show. And yes, they did play his music the entire time. Like he was New Jack or
New Jackico.
That one Anarchy in the Arena where they kept playing Moxie's music. And every time they replayed it, the people popped even bigger. And then finally they shut it off, and I was furious.
Yeah.
But anyway, he came back.
Dave was completely wrong about that, by the way.
And despite, by the way, them playing his music, I mean, he didn't get booed here. He was...
How could you tell?
Dude, did you watch the people? They were going nuts.
As large men are brawling past you, yes, you're probably going to be more excited. They played the song the entire time. We saw it when he came out at the pay-per-view. he got booed. The music was sung along to by everybody, like Pavlovian dogs. They sang along to the music, then started to boo him later on. So let's see what happens when there's no music there whatsoever.
Well,
and
we
guys
will see
are
Friday.
Brawling right past the fans what their reaction is.
We will see Friday. But yes, he was cheered. And I got reports from people in the building. I mean, nobody booed this guy. Although I guess during the break there were some boos.
They got to just go ahead. You know what one of the big problems is, and maybe we'll talk about it, probably not, we won't have time during the review, but Sammy Guevara is in a tough spot. And Ricky Starks, people want to cheer him. And I think at this point they want to cheer both him and Big Bill. The best thing I think you can do is go ahead and just flip the script and actually make Jericho and Sammy Guevara heels. I know with Sammy you flipped him a bunch of times, but you flipped him a bunch of times anyway. This may be the best thing to do because I don't think people are going to just start booing Ricky Starks. I mean, we've seen this too many times happen where people want to get behind this guy and they keep, giving reasons to not. And he's supposed to be a heel right now. I don't think that's going to jive with Jericho and Guevara. I just don't.
Well, we're going to find out on Saturday night. The finish was Sammy, as we'll get to, beating him, which probably means that Sammy and Jericho are not winning the titles, but I guess we'll find out. And then Julia Hart, Anna Jay for the TBS title. And then we got the Impact show, which is Alex Shelley versus Moose for the TNA title. Yes, the TNA title. All the champions getting new TNA belts, by the way. Trinity defending the Knockouts title against Jordan Grace, which could be the end of Trinity in TNA. I guess we'll see. A lot of talk about her going back to WWE. Chris Sabin versus Kushida and Vikingo in a three-way X Division title match. That sounds awesome. Ace Austin, Chris Bay against the Rascals, Grizzled Young Vets, Speedball, and Trent Seven.
I like that.
In a four-way. That sounds awesome. Knockouts Ultimate X match. Giselle Shaw, Zaya Brookside, Jody Threat, Tasha Steeles, Alicia Edwards, and Danny Luna. Then we have Josh Alexander versus Alexander Hammerstone in an Alexander match. PCO versus Dirty Dango, who just re-signed. Rich Swann, Steve Macklin is a pre-show match. Eric Young and Frankie Kazarian versus Brian Myers, Eddie Edwards, pre-show match. And Tommy Dreamer versus Crazy Steve for the digital media title.
It's still going. The feud, they can't be stopped.
So the other note here is that at the end of Dynamite, as we'll talk about.
Oh, you didn't want to bring up Top Dollar's video being released? Him and Who Kid together? The big TNA debut of
I'm
that?
afraid this is a bigger story.
Oh, okay.
Tony Schiavone interviewed Sting and Darby, and he said, who is going to be your final opponent? And the Young Bucks music hit. They returned from a long hiatus.
Came out with your mustache?
Yeah, they had mustaches. And then they had a stare down with Sting and Darby as the show went off the air. So, in fact, the final match will be Sting and Darby versus the Young Bucks. That will be Sting's final match. And for those wondering, the reason that this is the final match in Sting's career is because it was Sting's choice. And Sting wanted his final match to be with the Young Bucks. Apparently they had a match. I don't even know when it was. It might have been like a multi-person. But there was a match that involved Sting, Darby, and the Young Bucks. And Sting apparently had the time of his life. And so that's the match. I know there was a lot on Twitter yesterday. That should have been! Well, if you have a problem, take it up with Sting, because he got to pick, and that's what he chose.
Yeah. Well, nothing wrong with that. I mean, there you look at the amount of work the Bucks do during a match, and look at the amount of work Sting has put in since he's been back. So I don't want to see him in there with anybody more violent than the Bucks, that's for sure, because God knows what Sting will do in his last match. You know, it was a surprise. I figured maybe FTR would be a good fit there, and thought maybe a singles match, but if they're going to go with a tag match, I don't think you can really complain about this too much.
I'm praying Darby makes it. Back with the Dynamite Report, Observer Live.
those are two people I really value a lot. Those are two people I wish would stay here in AEW forever. With Sting, that's a great question. We talked about it, and I said, Sting, I would like for you to stay as long as possible here, and we really value you. And he said it's not really years at this point, it's more like months. And that was hard to hear, but it made sense. And I would have loved to have stretched it out as long as possible, but I pointed out that he had debuted at Revolution 21 and that maybe 3 years would be a fitting conclusion to this whole thing. And, he's amassed this great record, and going in tonight, they were 23-0. And to have Sting going for 3 years to be chasing that final great moment and to have this great send-off, I thought that was really cool, and he liked that a lot. So when I said that, he really took to that idea, and we went from there. So at that point, we started talking about Revolution, and when he went out and addressed the crowd in Houston and said that it's going to be my last year and that Revolution is the end, that was after we talked about it and kind of come up with, based on how he was feeling, that felt like, because he's feeling good. I think he wants to go out on top, and I think that's what we all want. So I'm glad he came to me and told me that. And then about Bryan Danielson, it's funny because that was different. It's also 3 years, but it was 3 years by design, because Bryan also arrived and Bryan also made his debut in 2021. Sting made his first appearance in 2020, but he had his first wrestling match at Revolution 2021. Bryan made his first appearance here at All Out 21. And when Bryan came in, we had made an agreement that he was going to wrestle for 3 years, and then he was going to go home and be a dad. And it was like one of those deals that sounds really good, but it's like you're watching the sand in the hourglass now. And for me personally, as I look at it, we're getting closer and closer to the end of that 3-year deal, and it's getting harder and harder for me. But think about the end.
Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also WrestlingObserver.com. So I thought this homecoming show was a pretty darn great show, in fact. And what was amazing is they're in Daly's Place. Here's another one of those weird ones. Wasn't Daly's Place D-A-L-Y? Like, it's...
No, it's always been Daly's. Like
it's the Mandela effect. This changed during the pandemic, I think.
It's not the Mandela effect.
When we switched to another timeline.
You just forgot the vowel there.
But they drew 2861, which is not a huge crowd. But man, what a great crowd it was.
Yes.
We had Hangman versus Claudio in the opener, and they had an excellent match. And Hangman did a lot of his old school spots, run down the ramp, lariat the guy into the ring. Hit a DDT, moonsault off the stage to the floor, tombstone in the ring for a near fall. He gets hit with the uppercut. They go up top. Claudio tries a powerbomb. Hangman turns into a Frankensteiner. 2 buckshots, gets the pin. Excellent opening match here to kick off the show. We had a great Brody Lee video package. And then, in the first of 2 Brody Lee tribute matches, Preston Vance, Orange Cassidy, Dustin Rhodes, and Adam Copeland versus Gates of Agony, Brian Cage, Lance Archer in an 8-person. And later in the show, they had one with the women, which was Sky Blue, Julia Hart, Saraya, Ruby Soho, against Anna Jay, Thunder Rosa, Willow Nightingale, and Chris Statlander. Both of them were essentially put together in the exact same way, You get the heat on someone. Someone gets a hot tag. Big spots at the end. Everybody hits a finish. And then you go home. And they put over that Brody Lee's 2 hand-picked proteges were Preston Vance and Anna Jay. And so they were the 2 that got the win in these 2 matches here. And we had a spot where Jake Roberts beat up Jose, the assistant, and everyone went nuts for that. Jose was like a heel, even though Preston was a babyface. That's kind of how it worked. Although he was screwing over the... I guess he was a babyface. But Jake beating him up was a babyface move to these fans. So anyway, finally, Orange hits the choke slam on Khan that she'd been trying all night. And then Cage and Archer started brawling. Edge ended up spearing Cage. Dustin hit the big dive. Preston hit the discus lariat. Got the pin. Very, very fun match. I enjoyed this. Bullet Club Gold promo. Bowens tried to convince them to team up as the Bang Bang Scissor Gang. And Austin is interested in this. Colton is not. And the Bullet Club said we'd think about it. Had a Joe promo where he comes down to the ring. Thank you, Joe chant. Says anybody wants a piece of the champion, get your win-loss record up, go to the championship committee. I'll be waiting. Swerve's music hits. He said first time at Daly's, I want that title. I'm going to take it. So then out comes Hangman. He wants a shot at the title. Swerve tells him, dude, I beat you twice. So he ends up getting pulled out by Nana. They leave. Hangman says, Joe, I've not forgotten what you did to me, and I'm going to take your title. So he leaves, and then out comes Hook. And he storms down to the ring, gets in Joe's face, and he says, 1 week. So next week on Dynamite, it is in fact Samoa Joe versus Hook for the AEW title.
What about the Hook symbol? Are you for it?
I didn't even notice it.
Oh, come on.
Did you make an H?
You didn't notice it? No, come on. Samoa Joe looked up. There was the big hook up there, like the Batman symbol on the wall.
Oh, really?
Before Hook came out. Yes.
I did not see the Hook symbol.
Yes, I swear to God.
I got to go back. I got to go back and watch that. Toni Storm interview. She'll be, she wants a meeting with Donna Palazzo.
They missed the chance, although they still have a chance to do it. Mariah May needs to be in there beating somebody down, and Toni Storm needs to be cheering her on. And then from behind, outruns Deonna Purrazzo, and then Toni Storm leaves the ring, and she beats up Mariah May, Deonna does. And then it could be Toni Storm sitting there with Luther going, it's Enrico Palazzo.
Then we had Ricky Starks and Sammy Guevara. Yeah, the match wasn't... I mean, you hear Ricky and Sammy, you think it's going to be way better than this was. And Sammy hit a super kick, just kind of cradled him off the ropes, and it was the pin. I was like, what? That was weird.
Something was missing there. Like it would, like he was going to hit the super kick and then roll into a pin or something. Like,
I don't know.
There was something like a quarter second off the entire match with those dudes.
So then afterwards, Sammy offered a handshake. They shook, but then Big Bill jumps him. They're stomping him down. New Jackico, I think he called him,
yes.
Makes the save. They play Judas over and over. They have this wild brawl. Sets up the tag match coming up on Saturday.
I mean, they did it right. I got to be honest. It went longer than I thought it would, but the idea of playing the music the entire time and then breaking into a brawl, going different ways into the crowd was the right thing to do.
That needs to be his next transformation, his next character. He needs to be a guy that they just play Judas for his entire short, wild New Jack brawl. He can have gimmicks and...
But Brian, no, he can't. You know why? Because he's so desperately afraid of having that be a heel song. Even when he was a heel, he came out there and he sung it, and everybody's going to sing along.
A heel song?
Look, he should have different music. People love that song. They love singing along to it. Let it go. To me, you got to let that go. And if you're going to be a heel, have one.
He's a baby face.
Doesn't he? To who?
He's literally a baby face.
When he was a heel, he used the same music, did he not?
Well, he did, but he's a baby face now.
To some.
And New Jack's music never turned heel on me, ever.
No, but...
I wish someone would buy the rights.
Yeah, but you're making it. You want him to do this and like beat it into the ground. I thought you want him to just.
Ground.
You think that's going to be a babyface thing?
Yeah,
I don't know.
No one ever turned on New Jack or his music.
They were scared to.
Got bigger every time. We had the Sky Blue match, which I noted. Anna Jay won with the Queen Slayer. Roderick Strong beat Brian Keith, and then Cole did a promo afterwards. Basically the same thing. Roderick Strong's going after the international title. Taven and Bennett are the ROH Tag Team Champions. And Wardlow will win the AEW title. So really nothing new that he didn't talk about last week.
The Young Bucks mustaches look better than Roderick Strong's mustache. They do.
They're all mustaches, dude. Renee and Deonna Purrazzo had an interview segment. Deonna said, I'm going to make my Collision debut on Saturday. Red Velvet showed up and said, let's stir it up. So they're going to stir it up.
Is that your mixer?
I guess. Stir it up, huh? Wasn't that a song? Then Sting and Darby against Hobbs and Takeshita in a Texas Tornado match. They should play that song through the entire match. They could have a wild brawl while Stir It Up plays over and over again. Deonna Purrazzo and Red Velvet. And then, Sting and Darby against Hobbs and Takeshita. God bless Darby. He's going to kill himself.
Uh-huh.
He took that Chaos Theory and landed right on his head. And that wasn't even the worst of it. The worst of it was when he got flung across the ring and did that spin, and then he snapped his neck on the bottom rope. And he's just a mess.
And in slow motion, you could see him knowing he was going to snap his neck on that rope in one of the rotations and tried to get his hand up. Didn't quite work itself out. But maybe you should also be concerned with Sting making it to his last match if he keeps being in matches like this. I know he's been the unbreakable older man, but my God, that two-table fall, the Scorpion Death Drop that ended up being the pin over Hobbs. I mean, they hit one of the tables, but that was a rough landing for both.
We had Darby doing a dive to the outside, and then he fell off the cheap seats into a coffin drop on Takeshita. Sting gave Hobbs a death drop off the stage through two tables. If I found out today, and I don't know if this is the case, but this is their last match before Sting's retirement, I would be happy. Because keep these two guys safe up until that match. Because Sting's going to do something insane in that last match.
Yes, and while you're at it, put Bryan Danielson back in that bubble until he's time for his last match, too, because he's still going to worry me until it's over.
No, he's got another one coming up with old Chicken Chest. Here in who, by the way, is no longer a Chicken Chest, which I take credit for.
Oh, come on.
Dude, he's bigger than Tom. He's bigger than Filthy Tom now.
Well, let's not.
No, he is. Tom was in the ring with him. He goes, he's bigger than me.
But can he throw those kettlebells the same way? I don't think so.
No, absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not. No. Then we had Tony getting in the ring, and that's when the Young Bucks mustaches came out.
And hat.
Hey, listen, if I'm going to have my last match, which I already had, by the way, but if I'm going to have another one, it would be against heel Young Bucks. You couldn't have a better last match. Except then I'd have to be a babyface.
I was going to say, wait, who's the...
Yeah, that wouldn't work out.
Well, if you're teaming with Filthy...
I want to go out hated. Done.
And on your back, looking at the lights?
I won my last match over the tag team champions. By myself, I might add.
Would you win them over the Bucks?
And then Tom had to come back and mess it all up, and Black
see?
Label Pro had to screw me by saying it was a non-title match. Listen, Mikey. I want those belts just handed to me. You realize that Jinder Mahal...
By the way, folks, he's not talking about me.
Jinder Mahal hasn't won a match on WWE television in 18 months, and he's getting a championship match this coming Monday. You're telling me I couldn't get a title match against the Bang Bros? I'm going to make my own set of belts. I deserve them. Back in a moment with Francine, Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. Very happy today to be joined by, yes, the Queen of Extreme, Francine, is joining us here today. Francine, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing quite well. Here we are in 2024, and you've got a podcast, and you're a mother, and hopefully you've not been hit by a kendo stick of late.
Not lately.
Excellent.
No.
Excellent. No. Well, listen, we got a lot to talk about today, and I guess the first thing is bring everybody up to speed with what's been going on in your life of late.
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. First and foremost, I'm a mother, married almost 16 years. I have two beautiful, healthy children. So they are my main priority. But I have been kind of dipping my toes into the wrestling world here and there. I'm still doing appearances on the weekends. And I have a podcast that I've had for 5 years now, but we just joined iHeartRadio. So very, very excited about that. It's called Eyes Up Here with Francine. I have a co-host named Chad, and we're doing it once a week. I like to call it a lifestyle podcast. It's mainly wrestling, but I also talk about motherhood, family, Disney, anything that's on my mind at the moment I can cover. So that's been really fun to do. And that carries over to my YouTube channel, which is ECW Diva Francine. And I post vlogs and, parts of the podcast after it's aired. And I've had that for, I guess, 4 or 5 years as well. So that keeps me busy at home. And then, being on the road and doing conventions, signings, shows, just busy sometimes. So it's good. It's a good busy.
How has the reaction been to the podcast and you kind of opening up and talking as much about your life as you do about wrestling? Because it seems like there's a lot more interest nowadays, and people want to go back and hear the stories and listen to these great wild stories from wrestling, but they also really want to know a lot more about their favorites past and what makes them tick and what goes on in their life. How has that reaction been? And did you have any issues opening up and talking about some of these private things or more personal things openly?
No, I didn't have any issues about it. I've been very vocal about my personal life. My mom recently passed away. We were caregivers for her for 16 years. My father died as soon as I got married, and, on his deathbed, he had said, "Will you take care of your mom?" And I said, yeah. So just got married, never even had that honeymoon period, and moved my mom in. So, we were taking care of her. Talked about that a lot on the podcast, the ups and downs of being a caregiver. I talk about being a mother, what's going on with the kids. We homeschool now. When the pandemic started, we pulled the kids. We didn't like what was going on in the school system. So now we homeschool. So I do that as well. The one thing that I get from the fans that listen to my show is, you were such a mean person. I won't say the word, the curse word.
Sure.
You were so mean on TV. We see another side of you. And, I am completely the opposite from what I was on the television. And, people have told me in the past they were scared to come up to me at a signing because they thought I'd be mean. And I try to explain, no, that's just the character that, there's heels and baby faces. I was a heel for 90% of my career. They get to see the real me, and they get to know me, beyond wrestling. They get to know me as a human being and not as a character. And I think people are drawn to that. I know I am. I love the, even though they're more of a work than a shoot, but I love the reality-based wrestling shows that are out there, because you get to see the real person, their family aspects. You get to see them outside of wrestling. And I think that's what people like these days. And my podcast, it's just me. And what you see is what you get. And I'm very open and I'm very honest. And I think people are attracted to that these days.
Now, you broke into wrestling very young. You were like 22 years old. And I guess, nowadays you want to break into wrestling. I mean, it's not that hard. But certainly in 1994, it was much harder. And how did you decide, okay, I'm going to give this a shot? And how hard was it?
Well, it was actually 93. And I was 20 years old. I was just turning 21 at the time. And I just started watching wrestling religiously at about 19 years old. So I didn't grow up with it. I wasn't one of those kids that, always went to the matches and wanted to be a professional wrestler. Like, I wanted to be a mom. Like, I played with dolls forever, and I couldn't wait until I got married, and I used to dream about being a mother. Like, that was my goal in life. So wrestling just kind of fell on my lap one day. I was working at a life insurance company in Center City, Philadelphia, absolutely hated it, and came home one night, and I turned on the TV. It was a Tuesday evening at 6 p.m., and ECW was on. And the only wrestling that I was watching at the time was like WWF and Global. And I saw these guys that I've never seen before. And even though it wasn't like, the WWF, it wasn't the big time, it just, something drew me into that program. I watched it for about a month or two. And there was a commercial, and it just said, if you want to be a manager, a referee, or a wrestler, call this number. And I hated my job so much, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I said, I'm going to call that number because I think I can do this. Never meeting wrestlers or, never went to an ECW show, didn't know anybody there. Picked up the phone and I called them, and it was Lex Ortiz. It was Bob's, our ring announcer's wife. And she was like, oh, you have to go see Todd Gordon. And I was just like, okay. And they gave me an address. I had to go to Jewelers Row in Center City and be buzzed in. And it was like the scariest thing. It looked like Alcatraz to me. Everything was bars and just very gated. And, Todd was in the back, and I met him. And the first thing he said was, you're really pretty. You won't have to bump. And I didn't know what a bump was.
Little did you know.
Little did I know I would bump my whole career. But, I didn't know what a bump was. And I just smiled and nodded my head. And he just told me, okay, show up here. And then I showed up there, and then it will show up here. And then I joined the wrestling school, which was in the back of the ECW arena. And I was trained by JT Smith. And I'm training, and I'm going to the house shows, and they would use me on house shows while I was training. And then I worked for them for about a year and a half. And then in 95, that's when they put me on television for the first time.
It's funny that you mentioned that you saw that commercial and thought that I could do this, and then you laugh about it. Like, what was I thinking? But you did do it. And it's funny because I'm a glutton for punishment. So I went back and watched a bunch of NWA TNA shows. And, yeah. So they had a segment with 8, 9 women on the screen. And, God, I can't even remember. I've tried to block it out of my mind. But, How
dare you?
No, let me get to this. You showed up, okay? And, a lot of people think, well, manager, you don't have to take bumps. You just have to go out there and, cheerlead or whatever. It's got to be easy, right? I watched this segment with all these women, and then you showed up, and I was like, holy smokes, that is a professional right there.
Oh.
This is not, I don't know, man. You could probably explain better, the idea that a manager is just an easy, nothing happening job. I think some people think that, but that's, not the case. You got to be really good to be a good manager.
Well, I mean, in ECW, the girls bumped. That's the thing. We didn't just stand there and do nothing. The locker room was so good, and the guys were so great to work with that they always let the girls shine. There was always a spot incorporated for us. They always put us in there. Because I mean, when I first entered as a trainee at the school, my mindset was becoming a professional wrestler. I thought I was going to be like a women's wrestler. I didn't really know much about ECW at the time, so I wasn't even aware that they didn't have a women's division, because I had joined them like after a month or two of watching them on television. So I wasn't really sure what I was getting myself into. And the first night that I met Paul Heyman, I was telling him, like, you know, I'm training, and he's like, yeah, he goes, I'm not going to use you as a wrestler. And like, I just was like, well, what are you going to use me as? And he goes, oh, you're going to be a manager. He goes, but you're going to be over. And, you know, I didn't know the terminology. I was new, I was green, and I just nodded and, okay, thank you. Like, I didn't want to argue. I figured this guy knows what he's talking about, because I'm green as grass and I don't know what's going on. You know, and I mean, he was right. I feel like it was the right decision. I feel like everything that I did and everything that the girls did at the time in ECW meant something, because a lot of other different feds weren't doing that, you know, and these guys were incorporating us and putting us over just as much as, you know, they were putting themselves over in the match. So I always appreciated that. And that's why I always tried to, like, I sat with them the whole time. I always tried to learn as much as I could. I wanted to be that sponge. I wanted to learn the business. I just didn't want to stand there and do nothing. So I always volunteered to take a finisher or something. I wanted to be involved. And when people who've never seen ECW comment like something like that, I'm like, you need to go back and watch, because the girls were not just eye candy. Sure, we had beautiful women, but they could go.
I would say that you probably, throughout the entire ECW run, the original ECW, I would say that you were probably the most recognizable woman of anyone that they had there. You're probably the most famous woman of everyone in ECW. And I mean, do you think back? I mean, where would you rank yourself?
Well, I feel like I was there the longest. I was there for 7 years. I never left. I stayed. I went down with the ship, so to speak, you know. So maybe that's why people remember me, because I was there for so long. I don't know. I mean, I just know that it was the greatest place to work. It was the best locker room I've ever been in. And I cherish the time that I spent there. So.
And when it ended, I mean, were you kind of like, I don't know, man, this was like a dream, but it's time to do something else, or what were your thoughts when it went under?
So the last show was in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, of all places.
Yes.
And, you know, Paul didn't come, and the morale was so low because we were never told. There was no official, like, proclamation, like, it wasn't known 100% this is the last show. It was just, there was a buzz going around the locker room. Yeah, this is it. And then, you know, Paul not showing up, and you're hearing little buzzes here and there. So I remember I was sitting there and I was crying, and Sandman, who is still a dear friend of mine, we talk all the time, he saw me crying, he called me over, and he had just bought a bar, and he's like, don't worry, you have a job. And I remember looking at him, and he's like, you're going to be my beer tub girl. And I was like, wow, this is going to be great. Also, I wasn't a product of the indies. I didn't start on the indies, so I didn't have that Rolodex of numbers that the guys had. And I remember, like, a bunch of us sitting there having a conversation, what are we going to do? And then, you know, a lot of the guys were like, don't worry, we're going to get you work because they pay a lot. We're right off of TV.
Well, actually, hold that thought. We'll come right back with that in a moment. Observer Live.
Salcedo in Sync Culture. Well, congratulations. I want to start off by asking you what the decision-making process was like for you in choosing AEW and becoming All Elite.
I've built up like a trust and a rapport with Tony. I feel I'm at my best over here, and I've enjoyed every time I've come over here, and right now, this is just the best decision for me and my family. I'm not interrupting my kids' school. Like, my missus can see her parents. Like, I get to be one of the best pro wrestlers that have ever done it, and I get to do it now on weekly TV, and I get to really test myself in these waters. I'm here for a reason, man. I'm here to go straight to the top. Like, and I want MJF. Like, I want that responsibility of being in the ring with him and like testing myself, because like for all this time, man, I've been on this side of the fence, and I've seen like, do you know what? Like, we'd always say, like, when we watch it, when we watch him come out, it was like, oh, he's not ready for the main event. I went, nah, I'll watch, and he did it. No, he's not a good champion enough. I went, nah, I'll watch, and he did it. I keep saying it, man. Like, I love watching MJF. I like the idea, but I want to see when he says his catchphrase. I want him to look me in the eye, bruv. Are you a fucking liar? I think you are, man.
Hey Chris, Denise Salcedo. I have a two-part question here. The first one is, we were just talking about Will Ospreay and the match that you had with him at All In. I wanted to get your thoughts on Will Ospreay becoming All Elite. And then the second part to that question is, there's been a lot of big things that have happened for AEW in 2023. And of course, given your history with the company, I wanted to get your thoughts on just what AEW has been able to accomplish this year.
First of all, I'm really glad that Will signed with us. I was kind of hoping that he was going to. We've been talking about it for a while. I talked to Will on the phone about it maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago maybe. I think the Wembley match we had was one of my favorites of the year. I think it was one of the best matches on the show, if not the best match. And that's what Will does. You know, he has, I think this is one of the greatest career years for any professional wrestler ever. The thing I like about Will that he's just tapping into, that we kind of got into before our match, is his character. He's got a character that's very believable. And I think that's something he's really going to get to focus on here in AEW that you don't really get a chance to in New Japan because of the communication gap. So I think this is the right place for him. I think we know what to do with Will Ospreay. I think there's a lot of huge matches he can have here, and to do the style that he wants to do for as long as he can do it. To me, he's one of the most valuable players in the world, and one of the biggest gets that AEW could acquire. So I'm really excited about that.
Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, the Queen of Extreme, Francine, joining us here. We should have got an hour today, but unfortunately we did not. But your podcast just launched iHeart 3 months ago, and every Tuesday. So
every Tuesday, 3:01 a.m. is when it drops. It is Eyes Up Here with Francine. You have to put the with Francine because there's another woman that does Eyes Up Here that I didn't know about, but I've had this for 5 years, so I wasn't about to change the name. So if you put the with Francine, you'll get it, and it's on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts.
Every time you say Eyes Up Here, I jump back like I did something wrong. There's a way that you say it where it's like, oh man,
Brian's that guy at the autograph signings.
No, I'm not. That's why I'm like caught off guard.
You know how many times I've said that at autograph signings?
Holy smokes!
They're like, well, then don't wear your shirt like that. I'm like, touche.
So hey, when are you going to Disney with the children? I hear that's happening.
We're leaving soon. We're leaving in a couple weeks, and I can't wait. And we go for 16 days every year. It's a big one. Yeah, can't wait for it. I'm super excited, and we're Disney nerds in this house. So.
Well, I want to thank you so much for doing the show today. I want to wish you the best on the podcast. We are out of time, but we will do this again. So thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll talk to you next time, Wrestling Observer Live.